I wanted to ask you too, just on your point of 99% of Georgia's games being blowouts, do you think obviously there's the conditioning factor in there, but do you think there's just a bit of a shock factor too when all of a sudden you're not dominating somebody and you're getting pushed around or you get scored on and you find yourself down in a game for the first time in a while?
Yeah, I mean, the end of the first quarter, Georgia's up 10-0. The kids are probably thinking, okay, we can handle this. It's like the line from Rocky Four or whatever when Ivan Drago finally gets a cut on his eye or something, and because Georgia just has this mental hurdle with Alabama they can't get over. But then in that first quarter to beat them 10, I said okay. But in the second quarter, it just fell apart. I mean, it just they outscored us 24-0 or whatever it was. We had 3 straight 3-and-outs. They scored all 3 times. And before you know it, you're looking up to 24-10 or whatever it was, and 24-17 at halftime. And then in the second half, the interceptions came. It was very similar to last year's game. I mean, the score was exactly the same last year when we played Bama. Stetson played okay in the first half last year against Bama, and it fell apart in the second half. He had 3 interceptions last year in the second half. He had 2 this year, one of them being a pick 6. You can't do that. You're not going to win big games turning the ball over twice, and one of them's a pick 6. And in the second quarter, you can't. Talking about the defense being wore out, the offense, you go 3-and-out 3 times in a row, that taxes your defense. So, I agree the defense played bad, but some of that's on the offense for leaving them out on the field for the entire second quarter.
Yep. And Jordan Battle dropped an early, probably should have been another pick 6 early in that first half. And I'm like, oh man, like that was a close one. So it's definitely it's the complementary football. And like you mentioned, I think that's what both teams want to do in this game is play that complementary football. Lou, I'll ask you too. As far as Georgia, if you had to, guess as far as their mentality coming into the game, I would imagine they're either pissed off about how they played against Bama. I don't think anybody was expecting that or wanted that to happen, or kind of like Justin said, do you feel like there's like kind of a shock, like we kind of got to pick it back up a little bit? Like, obviously it's still a huge game that you're getting ready to play next week. If you had to, put your finger on it, like where do you think the Georgia players and coaches, their mentality is on this game next week?
Yeah, well, coaches are master motivators, and they'll use anything to try to motivate their kids and the team. So I'm hoping anyway it'll be a similar situation to the week between the Alabama's Auburn and Georgia game. Alabama looked horrible. They were lucky to escape that game with a win. Everybody wrote them off. Oh my God, they're terrible. And then they came out and played their best game of the season. So I'm hoping it's something similar to that. Because I think this is going to be a good game. There's been a lot of disappointing playoff games. For college football fans who aren't pulling for either Georgia or Michigan, I think you're going to get a good game here. Now, I've thought that before about some playoff games, and it didn't work out that way. What is it, Mark? 11 out of the 14 have been blowouts?
That sounds about right. 2014 Alabama, Ohio State was a good one. The Oklahoma-Georgia game, obviously, that one play-by-play, Lou. Great game, OT 2017. And then what would be the other one? Oh, the Clemson-Ohio State game was a classic a couple years ago. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. So outside of that, they've all been blowouts?
Holy
cow.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. A couple of goose eggs up there as well, right?
Yeah, Michigan State,
Clemson, Ohio State.
Yeah, 31-0 and 38-0. Yeah.
Yep.
Crazy.
And of course, Alabama has beaten Oklahoma pretty bad a couple of times. I think LSU beat Oklahoma pretty bad. A lot of blowouts in these first round playoff games. And as much as I respect Cincinnati, but if you're trying to pick the blowout, it's probably going to be that. I like Cincinnati, and look, Cincinnati's got a better secondary than Georgia. Cincinnati's got 3 NFL players in that secondary, and Desmond Ritter's a better quarterback than Stetson Bennett. Top to bottom, though, Georgia's better. But so it's not that I don't think Cincinnati can compete. I do, but if you're trying to pinpoint, one of these two games that is more likely to be a blowout, I think it's that one.
Well, and I think too, media companies and all that too agree with you because, Michigan or Michigan, Georgia has the prime time, 7:30 game. And
Yeah.
then, that first round game, I think it's 2:30 or 3:30 pretty early on in the day. So I think the folks who schedule the games agree with you and think that this will be the better of the two games.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, obviously, I want Georgia to win. I don't hide that. I'm a Georgia fan, but as a college football fan, um, you know, I want to see good games when these playoffs come around. And I think we'll get one. Georgia and Michigan, strength on strength. I mean, the offensive and defensive lines of these teams are both really, really good. Quarterbacks kind of fall into that game manager category type of deal, but I think it's going to be a good game.
So is this the deal with the two quarterbacks? You can pretty much throw them in a bucket, and they're the same guy, Cade McNamara, Stetson Bennett, except McNamara doesn't make mistakes. Stetson Bennett, you talked about Alabama last year. You talked about, Lou, the Alabama game this year. It seems like Stetson Bennett, you could take like 31 or 32 of his 35 pass attempts, and you're good with it. It's like 3 times in each one of not just those games. Anytime they play a quality opponent, seems like there's like 3 or 4 times he just makes he just completely misreads something, doesn't see one, tries to force a throw and just brain freeze and does a stupid thing.
He's Brett Favre without the upside. Brett Favre never saw a covered receiver ever in his 20-year
Right.
career. He never saw a receiver that was covered ever. And that's why he leads the NFL all time in interceptions, but he's got a few touchdowns too, and he scrambled around and did a lot of stuff outside of the pot, when stuff would break down. And Stetson's kind of that way too. But when Stetson has to throw the ball, that's the problem. When we're running the ball effectively and he can play action on 1st and 10, he's a pretty good college quarterback. He's good enough. But when you need a quarterback to do something for you, that's where he really has a problem. When the other team knows he has to throw the ball, that's a problem.